Hello everyone and welcome. In this video we are going to be installing an Edelbrock Supercharger kit onto my 2016 Mazda MX-5. Now you may have noticed this is a healthy upgrade of an environment from what you're used to seeing on my channel. This is in fact the brand new shop of none other than the Mr. Humble Mechanic.
Hey dude, I'm so excited.
I'm excited as well. So he's got a new shop, a new lift, and we're gonna get to work. Now you obviously already know that I bought a Miata.
Jason, I also bought a Miata.
Charles also bought a Miata. And you know what? By the end of this video, you too might be convinced that you should buy a Miata. Well, here's the thing. When you're buying a car, there's a lot of different websites out there that you can purchase from. eBay Motors, cars.com,
Jason, not every video needs a whiteboard, Jason.
Bring a backup whiteboard. Bring a trailer.
Where did you even get this from?
Okay, you already know where I'm heading with this. Today's sponsor, Autotempest.com, lets you search all the top listing sites in the US and Canada all in one place. So whether you're searching for a Volkswagen Golf R32 or a different Volkswagen Golf R32 or a Volkswagen Golf R, or a Volkswagen Golf GTI. Wait, Charles, seriously, is everything you own a Golf?
No, we got the Miata.
Well, whatever it is you're searching for, and wherever it's listed, you can find it with Autotempest.com. Check it out with the link in the video description. So this is an Edelbrock Supercharger kit. I'm gonna put a list on the screen of all the tools required, and this isn't gonna really be a how-to video, it's more gonna be an overview of the install. It is 153 steps. Edelbrock provides you a beautiful binder with color pictures of all the steps. I'll have a link to this if you're curious to check out actually step by step, but there's 153 steps, so we're just gonna work through some, do a recap of how it went, talk about any significant challenges along the way. Highs and lows, as Charles describes.
I wonder if we're gonna have enough tools and how many part store runs this one
Yeah,
is
last time we had maybe 12 part store runs, so maybe we can beat that, maybe we'll have more.
Jason, isn't that a different shirt than you had on before?
Charles, if I'm gonna pretend to work on a car for a little while, I'm definitely gonna wear a shirt that says mechanic.
My favorite part about that is I'm actually doing the same thing, so this is gonna be hilarious.
So the very first thing we're gonna do before getting started with the install is to load the calibration file and flash the ECU so that that's already done. Once the install is complete, you don't have to worry about any trouble with that happening. So it's a very simple process, but you do have to email Edelbrock with your specific vehicle calibration ID, and then they'll send you back a calibration file to load onto it. And then once that's all set, you know you're good to go. So once the supercharger install is complete, then everything will run smoothly. So this is the engine, right? Is that right, Charles?
This is in fact the engine.
Okay, sweet. And so I thought we would give one last shot of it before things started coming out here. So some things are not gonna be going back in, like this fancy little SkyActiv technology.
I'm sad about that.
Plastic bracket.
I'm gonna keep this.
It's gonna be gone for good. And then there's some induction noise that we've got going on here, some tubing for that. That's going to come out. So a few things won't be seeing their way back in, but it actually does use the factory airbox. Charles, first of all, how cool are lifts?
It's pretty much the best.
This is amazing. He just had it put up.
Yeah, special just for you.
So first steps have been getting the battery out, getting some fender covers out, obviously taking the wheels off.
Next up,
what else are we doing under here?
Well, that's the belly pan here in the center section. Next up, we got to unplug the lighting in the bumper cover, and bumper cover comes off. Then I think that's all we have left to do.
All right, moving right along. We are on step 44 right now. So we took the front bumper off, lowered things down, got back inside the engine bay, and took out the airbox, upon which Charles found the engine air filter.
Mr. Fensky?
Oh, yes, that's me.
So, Mr. Fensky.
Yeah, is everything okay with my car?
Well, that kind of depends on what our next decisions are going to be. We were servicing your car, doing your 8,000 point inspection, and noticed that your engine air filter, it is just slam clogged up full.
Are there supposed to be sticks in your engine air filter?
You know, depending on what kind of car, some come with that, but your car does not actually use sticks inside the air filter. Sir, this is a huge, huge, huge deal. Not only is it going to cause like poor fuel economy, it can get really, really bad on you.
It's probably cheap to replace though, yeah? I mean, not
yeah, you know, we can do a really good job for you today. We can get it knocked out in 20, 30 minutes, $499.95.
Wow, $500.
Yeah, I know. I can't can't believe it's so affordable either. You know, sometimes that kind of stuff hurts the wallet a little bit, so I'll see if I can find you a little bit of a coupon.
So is this something I could do myself?
Well, you know, you might be able to if you understand the full workings of a combustion engine.
What?
Exactly. That's how most people feel.
Ooh, okay.
And the other thing is if this is done improperly or not replaced at all, it can cause bad things to your car. I know, sir, that you really love your car. More importantly, you care about your family.
Yeah, I guess we're going to have to do it.
Let me get this replaced for you. I think you're going to be really happy. And most importantly, your family's going to be proud of you for making a right decision.
That's the thing that matters most.
Absolutely. We also installed our first part, a tiny little plug for the bulkhead. I don't think you can actually call them firewalls anymore.
Okay, I won't call it anything.
Okay, don't call it anything. We removed a whole bunch of stuff, one of those being the noise pipe that actually attaches right to the bulkhead. And since we removed it, plugged it back up.
And while Charles was actually putting parts back in, I was looking around the room trying to find some grease to put on my arms so that I looked like I was cool.
Even your shirt's dirty.
I know. I even put a little on my shirt to make it look like, oh, he's really in this.
You got some on your face.
Yeah.
So up to this point, even though we have installed our very first part, it's primarily been removal. We got the intake manifold off, which is like a pretty big victory piece, I feel like.
It was, yeah. So there's 4 bolts on top, which are pretty easy to access. Then there's this one bolt on the bottom, which Charles came up with this nice little mechanism here.
We got the wobbler.
Double extension and a wobbler at the end. That's a pretty cool little tool right there. And so we got this off, but then there's a bunch of harnesses that are still connected to it to get it finally out. And then once this is out, there's quite a bit of space in there.
And now this piece is not going to be going back in because our supercharger unit will replace all that stuff. So
in the instructions, they actually have you reuse these little gaskets in here. I went ahead and just bought some new ones so that we didn't have to reuse these. And interestingly, looking at the valves, there's quite a bit of carbon in there.
you know, from my barometer, this is actually not that bad for 30 or 40,000 miles, whatever we got on the car. But it's obviously more than you would want.
Yeah, well, we did the supercharger on my S2000, obviously, and we looked at those valves, which are port injected, and they were quite clean.
How many miles were on the S2000?
And the S2000 was like 105, 110,000.
Yeah, so
this has 33,000 or so. And
3 times the miles.
Pretty intense little carbon action going on in there.
We're about a third of the way through. Jason, what would you say the difficulty level of this job is so far?
So far, it hasn't been bad. It's been pretty straightforward.
And ups to Edelbrock, because these instructions are prime.
Yeah, the pictures really are good. There's arrows. So I think we left off with how the instructions were very clear and nothing was going wrong. Of course we said that, and then immediately it became a bit more challenging. So the hose routing is a bit unclear with what you're doing with the 2 supercharger runner for the intercooler on the engine side. How those hoses route to the front is a little unclear. So we're figuring that out, and we're going to skip ahead later and start routing up front so that we can make sure we have that hose routing well done before we put in the supercharger itself.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in that space, including the steering linkage, so we don't want to just throw it in there, cover it up with the supercharger, and then go, oh crud, it's rubbing the steering.
Yep, and so also getting that supercharger runner in was quite a tight fit to get access to the bolts that actually hold it on there. So that was another challenge. And then of course I know everyone's gonna ask, because the supercharger runner just went on and I just showed you how dirty those valves are. Jason, why are you covering up those dirty valves and not cleaning them? I don't have a good answer for you. I think the quick answer is I'm lazy, and it works. Yeah. So I was asking Charles though about what you guys used to do at the dealership, because Volkswagens often have this carbon deposit issue with direct injection engines. And there's a cool tool that I thought was neat if you want to describe.
Yeah, really the best way to take care of that carbon buildup once it's become a problem. There's probably some maintenance things you could do along the way to prolong the life of that, or prevent it for a longer period of time, I should say. But what we would do is we had an insert that went into the intake manifold runner. Shop vac goes in the top, and then a wand goes on the inside. That wand's connected to a media blasting machine, and we would basically walnut blast it. And you could go in, and in about 30 seconds per cylinder, get them completely clean.
Amazing.
Obviously, with the intake valves closed, is a vital part of that too.
Yes.
The other method, which does work okay, and it's probably a pretty good DIY solution, is to use carburetor cleaner and like brushes Zip ties bound together works really, really well too. And you can get in there. The problem with that is you're huffing all these chemicals like it's right in your face. So not my favorite method of doing it, but it does work. And I think for this that there was carbon buildup. That's always going to be a direct injection issue. When it's only direct injection, I think you're going to be just fine. Just running it.
He says it's going to be just fine. I'm happy with that answer. Things are rolling right along. We're on rollers too.
Oh yeah, we are the things that are rolling along.
And so mostly what we've been working on this morning has been intercooler related. So the intercooler has gone on. There's some shrouding that wraps around it that you take off.
Trimmed up this
Charles
side.
did a little cutting over there.
We got a water pump, some hosing, some routing. The reservoir is
The reservoir goes in.
I must say, the reservoir bracket has probably been the most satisfying installation up to this point.
Yeah, the reservoir bracket is exceptional. It makes you excited, and you kind of wish every other bracket was just as good. And then the hose that's going to the pump, also the way it fits in, and it's preformed, and it just has all the right bends and plenty of clearance everywhere it goes, which is super exciting, which is not the story for the two up top coming from the back of the intercooler. The big challenge is the steering column. So there's a little bolt in that steering column, and as you rotate it around, it wants to tap on those two coolant hoses, which obviously you don't want to do that.
Yeah, the space over there is considerably tighter.
And Charles did a little convoluted.
Oh yeah. I don't really actually love that convoluted tubing, especially around coolant hoses. It never seems to fit quite right or look quite right to me. But it's better than having no protection on those hoses.
There's various levels of protection available for any circumstance.
And it doesn't have to be so convoluted.
Would you look at that? We've got the supercharger in, which wasn't super easy to do. It's quite tight of a fit to get in there. And the first time we tried and failed.
It's big, it's heavy, it's awkward, and you really have to position it correctly. There's a lot going on behind it, so we were running into hitting some coolant
There's
lines.
two things you have to kind of keep in mind. There's a bracket on the bottom that you don't want to knock and hit the wrong direction, so you have to make sure this bracket is leaning forward. And then also there's a crank breather hose that's plugged into this, and it's long so that you can get it on before you dip it in there, but then it's got all that extra hose that's getting caught as you're bringing it back, so you got to make sure you can feed that breather hose as you drop it into place.
I don't want to say what I'm going to say next, but I'm going to say it anyway. So far, I can tell you that's probably been the most challenging part of this entire deal.
Yeah, getting the supercharger in, yep. So we still have our intercooler hoses kind of loose, not perfectly positioned. And so next we're going to kind of focus on getting those in the right locations. So while Charles is getting those hoses situated and put into place, I thought why not show you guys what's going on inside this supercharger and avoid doing a little work at the same time. So we've got this is actually the internals of the little root style supercharger that's going in this Miata. This is made by Eaton. It's very similar actually to the supercharger that goes in the Shelby GT500. Difference being this is significantly smaller.
And it's going to be so fast.
And it's going to make a little bit less power than a GT500. But overall, it's pretty neat. So these two rotors here, root style supercharger, and the tolerance between the rotors themselves, as well as the rotors and the housing, is about 0.001 to 0.005 inches. So very tight tolerance to make sure you have a good seal for that airflow. And basically how it works is you have some air come in from this side right here. These rotors will rotate like so. And so right here is where it seals, and you can see as this rotates, that final little lobe right there closes off and forces the air below it. Regardless, pretty neat to see the internals of this bad boy. Thank you to Eaton for sending me this to show on video. And is the install done? Are we done, Charles? Did I take long enough? I guess I got to keep explaining this. Okay, so really what's happening here. Hey guys, back in for another
convoluted update.
Talking with Charles and Jason. How are we doing, Charles? Are we doing all right?
We're doing good. We got the charger in. We got some serpentine belt action happening.
The charger is in.
That's a monumentous thing.
That is a monumentous thing. So one of the things was after that charger went in, making sure that the hoses, which as I was explaining how the supercharger worked, Charles was figuring out.
Yep.
And there's plenty of space now, as you can see, between the steering column and those two hoses, so we don't have to worry about those touching. Charles, what else were you doing in there?
Also went ahead and added a little bit of isolation foam just to make sure, like it's probably okay without, just to make super sure that we don't have any hose rubbage issues.
Another interesting thing, we got the idler in, and the washer that comes with it to install it just fell right through it. It seemed like it was sized too small. I'm not positive, but I mean, it just fell through it, so.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it was maybe just the incorrect washer for the application, because not only was the overall diameter too small, the thickness was too small as well.
Right.
So luckily, because I never throw anything away in my whole entire life, I had a couple of extra washers that we went ahead and used. So.
And then after that, we had to bend the AC line. Charles, how do you feel about bending AC lines?
I am 0% a fan of bending AC lines. You know, I totally see, though, in this application, the way it's set in the engine compartment makes a lot of sense. And the alternatives are we completely re-engineer the charger, we include a new AC line, which then means you have to evacuate and recharge your AC system, which for the average DIYer is not something they're gonna do. Not only that, this is 1234YF refrigerant, so it's mad expensive.
That's what Charles tells me. Yeah, I mean, the way that it is routed in here, all of the pulley connections are all very close to one another, so it is compact. And it looks smart once that AC line is bent out of the way, but it's just a little nerve-wracking that you have to move something like that. So next, we're gonna get back under the car,
Yep.
and we're gonna get more of this convolution going on some of the hose routing down there.
Yep, we got that. We have our wiring for, this is, I think, is a throttle body connector extension, and this is our wiring for that coolant pump. After that, we have our intake system. Throttle body obviously has to go back on. Our intake system goes back in. It retains the factory intake system just with an upgraded air filter. Also with the brake booster, we have to extract a check valve out of the factory brake booster hose and install that in the new brake booster hose, which looks pretty straightforward. Day number 3.
Day numero tres.
That is number 3.
Yep, it is the morning of day number 3. So
Indeed.
last night we pretty much finished getting the parts in the car.
Yeah, yesterday was a long day. Got the throttle body in, air intake system in, different throttle body boot, which eliminates the fitting for the noise pipe.
Yep.
Some wiring routed.
A little bit of wiring routed, did a nice little cutout here for the battery that looks beautiful. So the battery is back in. And then we bled the intercooler of air, and that was like our first, not first, but it was an issue. There were plenty of issues, but it was an issue initially.
Yep. Yeah, well, initially the pump wasn't coming on, so some quick checks and ended up just turning it off and turning it back on again.
Yeah, unplug everything, replug everything back in, and now the pump works, so that's great news.
Had a little sploosh of coolant, but that's okay.
Yeah, a little sploosh of coolant that came out. You're not supposed to have air get fed through that pump, but you know, it happens, and you just run it, and over time you just bleed out those bubbles, keep refilling it as you run it again and again, and eventually you get all the air out.
Yep. We also modified the splash shield so that our coolant lines could run back up and through to the reservoir, which is pretty straightforward thing.
And then also our steering column, the hoses coming from this intercooler, the back of the intercooler, had actually dropped down. Not really quite sure how, but they dropped down. So reconnected those back up so that they're away from that steering column, so you don't have to worry about those hoses, and they're secure now.
It's also like a good example of like, you need to go back and double check, even if you're 100% sure. Just go back and put your eyeballs on everything. Yep. We had a near miss episode with the fuel line that neither one of us plugged back in, so thankfully we didn't cut the key on before plugging that in.
Yeah, so when we were going to bleed the intercooler, we had an open fuel line ready to spray us with some fuel.
Right in the, good thing we were all safetied up.
Stay hydrated.
Stay hydrated.
Can't happen on an electric car. Should have bought an electric car.
Oh man, if only it were a Tesla.
Alrighty, everything's in. There's a few things obviously we're gonna put back on, but we're gonna start it up and see what happens. And you know, we wanna be able to see any problems that might appear. So
I got the juice ready if we need more juice.
Charles got the juice ready for the intercooler. Woo! Let's do this.
Cross your fingers.
All right, Charles, you ready?
All clear.
It's alive! Woo! It's alive! I can tell it's already making way more power.
I can feel the power like emanating, radiating.
Yeah. We did it!
Yay!
Charles, the car is back together.
It is back together.
And now there's a supercharger in it.
Oh, is that
On
what
it,
really?
With it, beside it, in it, around it.
Yeah, all up in it.
So, the last steps we have completed. We got the wheels back on,
Yep.
we got the fender liners back in, we got the bumper back on, all the bits and pieces.
Belly pan.
Also, Charles, you did a great job. I think this is the best fitment my front bumper has ever had.
I would agree.
Now that you have put your special touch on it,
Yeah.
it's very flush and it looks quite nice, so I appreciate your assistance.
Yeah.
Charles, what I am curious about is your overall impressions of putting this kit in, what you thought of the process, the kit itself.
Yeah, so overall, a really solid kit. I liked a lot about it. I think the installation was pretty good, pretty trouble-free. The only real major issue we ran into, and it wasn't even a major issue, was that washer with the pulley that I think could be problematic. I think it's important to understand too, like the instructions were really good, minus the hose routing. That part I think could have had a little bit more clarity, but these kits are generally not meant for like a basic DIYer with 100-piece toolkit from the local hardware store. They even call this out in their instructions, like you should have a professional or someone with a lot of experience. I don't know why you came to me for that, but you did, so it's awesome. So, out of 10, I would say a solid 9.
That's pretty good.
Drawing a little bit back from the routing of the hoses, I think could have been a little bit better, and just bending coolant lines.
Or the AC line.
Bending the AC line, right? I don't love it, but we didn't have to drill any holes in the car or anything like that, so I'll cut them some slack.
One of the things I've been really impressed by is how easy it is to find a car on Auto Tempest. No, one of the things I've been really impressed by with this kit, and part of why we did this here and not in my garage this time, is we made 0 parts store trips.
That is weird, but feels awesome.
Yeah.
Almost like, why didn't we have to go to the parts store?
Yeah, it is strange, because we had to make probably a dozen for the S2000, many of which was because we're working in my garage. I feel like you have way more tools, so there were often moments where you had a cool tool that was unique for the situation that we needed. Also, you had a few spare parts, like the pulley washer that wasn't correct. You had extra washers.
A million zip ties.
A million zip ties. I do have a couple zip ties in my garage. I am an engineer after all. You got to go to the basics when engineers are working on stuff.
Really break it down.
But overall, impressed with the kit from that standpoint. I also read through the instructions this time first, rather than just starting.
Huge. Also, this is a much newer car than the S2000, so there were a lot of parts that I think on the S2000 we could have easily not replaced.
Yes.
It just didn't make sense. It's one of those while you're in there things. Plus, the S2000 kit was a lot more. It was injectors, it was fuel system as well. So from an ease of installation, this I think was way easier.
Yeah, we
than
did
the
it in
S2000,
significantly less time than with the S2000 for sure. So after we had completed everything, we went for a quick shakedown drive just to make sure, give a last check over everything, drive it around a little bit, let things get up to temperature, and hopefully it doesn't fall apart and spray fluid everywhere.
Exactly, and that's important to do that on such a major installation. Brought it back in, got it back up in the air, looked for leaks, make sure none of that stuff was rubbing, make sure all of our routing was correct, and I think it's good. I think it's ready to thrash.
Yes, so I am very excited about what is coming up next. So I'm going to be doing before and after on the dyno. I'm going to be doing acceleration runs and of course a proper test drive of how this thing behaves now that it has a supercharger on it. Super excited about that. That is all to come. Once again, a big thank you to Auto Tempest for sponsoring the supercharger installation. Go find your Miata or whatever car you want on Auto Tempest with the link in the video description. And Charles, thank you so much for your help. I could not have done this without you. I really appreciate it.
Always a good time. And hey, if you keep buying them, we can keep supercharging them. Yes. They just all have to be yellow.
They have to be yellow, they have to be a roadster, they have to be the exact same thing.
That sounds like a pretty big victory.
If you guys have any questions or comments, of course, feel free to leave them below. Thanks for watching.
Bye. Oh, that was good. We didn't even plan that.
Wasn't even planned.